Welcome back, listeners, to a brand new episode of The New Standard. The title of the episode for today is It's a Component of It, which, if you've listened to any Mike Tomlin press conference this year, it's a component of it. Let's just say that's his favorite catchphrase at the moment. Big up, Fifi. But before we jump into the show, I have my partner in crime to my left. What's up, Big Neil?
Beautiful day in Zamunda, Lance. Steelers 7-4, looking like they are poised to make a shocking and astonishing run at or around the AFC North division title. We're talking like AFC North adjacent even. It's not a great bet, but not a terrible one either, considering the way their schedule is going to fall. Baltimore a game and a half up with a bye coming up. Win against Arizona this weekend. Steelers West coming to Acrisure Stadium, Fieldium. One win there with the Ravens on a bye would put them one game behind. And again, a very favorable schedule the rest of the way. The Steelers are in contention for a division title, which is really weird, Lance, because at the beginning of the year, I said they'd win 10 games. After 3 weeks this season, I did not think they were going to win 10 games. So it's almost like my prediction is the underdog status now, and you get more and more excited the deeper we get into this. When December football starts, they could be pushing pretty well for that 10, maybe even 11 win mark, and that would pretty much wrap up an AFC wild card, a return back to the postseason for your Pittsburgh Steelers. Not in a roundabout way what we expected, just not how we expected it to happen.
Hey, man. However you get it, and that's what the Steelers and Steeler fans are looking for. So today on this particular show, we're going to talk about the playoff picture. We're going to talk about Dionte, and the three-dimensional level chess that Neil talked about that Mike Tomlin might actually be playing in this situation. We're also going to talk about some crumbs from the last game. We're going to talk about potential OC candidates, preview the game, and give you our prediction. But before we do that, if you want to participate in the program, go to YouTube, check us out live, do a search for The New Standard and Lance Williams and or Neil Coulong. Also, if you want to catch us via podcast, however you get your podcast, do a search for the same Lance Williams and The New Standard, or Neil Coulong and The New Standard, or Lance and Neil and The New Standard. And hopefully you can find us. And if you do, please hit us with a like and a subscribe. Please support the program in this holiday season. A gift to us would be a spreading the word to someone and a subscription, or just participating in the show. That would be lovely because we appreciate it. With that being said, Neil, let's jump into this playoff picture. As we stand right now, and I'm looking at a great graphic that I found on Reddit. Right now, the number one seed is the Baltimore Ravens. The 2 seed is the Kansas City Chiefs. The 3 seed is the Jacksonville Jaguars. Interestingly enough, the Steelers have played all 3. They have not played the Chiefs. They have played Baltimore and Jacksonville. Number 4, the 4 seed is Miami. The 5th seed currently is the Steelers. The 6th seed is the Cleveland Browns, followed by the Colts, the Texans, and the Denver Broncos. Right now, if I look at the graph, if I blow the graphic up, the Steelers' odds of making the playoffs sit at a 78%. Chance to win the division, 18%. Chances for a round 1 bye at 1%. Let's just start it off really quickly. Those percentages sound about right for you?
I excuse me, not a math major. I will say this, those percentages change drastically each week. They were very different last week, and they're going to be very different again next week. It depends on whether or not they win the game. Now, if they get to 8 wins, with their schedule falling the way that it is, I would think they would have a pretty significant chance of
And
advancing to the postseason.
let me say
And
their schedule, what their schedule is before you finish. Their remaining schedule is the Cardinals 2-10, the Patriots 2-9, the Colts 6-5, Bengals 5-6, Seahawks at the Seahawks 6-5, and at the Ravens 9-3.
you're looking at a home heavy slate of games with easily by far the best opponent being a week 18 game in which Baltimore might not even need to play it. So it's favorable the entire way. That I think at Seattle is probably the toughest one that they'll have. At Colts, I get that the Colts are winning games. I don't believe a whole lot in that team. I don't believe in Gardner Minshew being able to do much against the Steelers defense. As much as I like Gardner Minshew, I don't think that's going to happen. Cardinals are not a good football team. The Patriots are a really bad football team. We saw the Bengals. This is a game at Akron Heinz. The next time they'll play them. See, again, at Seattle, that's going to be tough. And if the Ravens are playing for something, that's going to be tough. But even without that, that's 4 wins. Very possible for the Steelers to advance to the postseason with what they have. In fact, I would say right now, based on what they have, barring injuries, barring the unforeseen, they should advance to the postseason. Now, what is that worth? If the playoffs started this week, they would be at Miami. Miami is a real interesting opponent for them. I could see that game being very close and low scoring, and I could see that being a 16-0 Miami rout. It would just really depend on what defense the Steelers would want to bring down to South Beach in that game. Tough matchup for sure, but that's the postseason. I would like their chances against Miami probably better than the last time they were in the playoffs playing at Kansas City. But overall, I think Pittsburgh has the opportunity to, seal their own fate with all of this. Again, people are going to complain. Even if the Steelers win a playoff game, the haters will say that it's nothing. It's not a big deal. Rome wasn't built in a day. It would definitely show they moved in a good direction, and that would push them into another critical offseason as far as the direction and the trajectory of this franchise.
So I was going to do a Lance Stradamus or a Neil Stradamus segment in this particular program. And the first thing I had on it was Steelers win 10 plus or more games. That was my first of my Lance Stradamuses. And at 7-4, with the Cardinals, Patriots, and Bengals on the schedule, I think they're going to fall into 10 wins. I mean, point blank, you play halfway decent football, don't turn the football over, you're going to fall into 10 wins. I think they also beat the Colts. My original prediction, I believe, if you go back and take a look at the prediction show that we did a while ago at the beginning of the season, I think I predicted 11-6. And as I look at this schedule, I actually see 4 more wins on this schedule. I see that the only 2 games I think they will be an underdog in will probably be the Seattle and the Ravens game. And I think that will be coming off of a 4-game winning streak. I think the Steelers get to the Seahawks game at 11-4. And at that point have probably close to clinched a playoff spot. But the question is, for you, Neil, I think we're both saying they're going to make the playoffs. Playoffs.
It's weird, isn't it? It's a roundabout way of saying it. They're not all but in. I really like their chances against Arizona, like every team in the NFL should feel. As far as favorites, I would agree with you, and I've had some pushback on suggesting they might be road favorites over the Colts. Jonathan Taylor just went down. He's not expected to be back for 2-3 weeks. Maybe my guess would be they're resting him now to save him up for that Steelers game because that's one they're going to need. They're not a division champion contending team. They're going to need to get in that wild card, and they're going to need a big AFC win over the Steelers in order to do that. So I think they're resting him up for that. We'll see what happens. Maybe they are road underdogs, but that's not going to be more than a point, maybe 2, 1.5 would be my guess if they are underdogs. I wouldn't be surprised if they were favored in that. Let's see where Seattle is too. That's kind of a bipolar team. You're not really sure what you're getting week in and week out with them. My guess would be probably Seattle -2, 2.5. And Baltimore, to be fair, again, they're the top seed. They could run the table here. They might not need that game, and they're not going to put a whole lot out for Pittsburgh. We've seen it before. They've done it before. They're playing Robert Griffin III against them when they're preparing to rest up for the playoffs. I don't think that they're going to go all out against Pittsburgh in that game. Maybe they're still favorites, but it's not going to be the same Ravens team that would have at that point theoretically clinched the top seed. So I think overall, the Steelers have a very good chance. And at the very least, it's going to start this weekend. Then you're looking at a short week game, but against maybe the most miserable offense in the NFL. You think the Steelers offense is bad? Watch the Patriots. They're an absolute
really
disaster right now. And that's a short week. Then they have a mini bye before playing the Bengals team that we saw them play last weekend. And the Steelers, truthfully, if we can segue into this, the Steelers offense, as exciting as it was to reach 400 yards, to see crazy things like throws over the middle, deeper passes being tried more than once a game, all of that is fun. Steelers offense did not play well. They really, watching it again, they really did not play very well. That's encouraging to me in the sense that they can do a lot better than they did. They left it out on the field. The Bengals didn't stop them. The Steelers stopped them. So they got the yards. They got the big plays. I think that's the difference from what we haven't seen, why they haven't touched 400 yards. They didn't have big plays. They incorporated that into their plan. They tried it a bit more, and they were successful with it. Once they finish a bit more, that's what they left out there. I think 2 touchdowns, in my opinion. If not 2 touchdowns, then definitely 10 points. They should have been a lot better in this game. They can beat Cincinnati at home for what Cincinnati showed this past week. And by then, they got nothing left. They'll be eliminated from the postseason. So you have to like their chances pretty. I would even, if we could place the bet now, I think they win their next 3. They should beat all 3 of these teams. And that's 10 wins, like you said.
And you know what happens when we use should in the Pittsburgh Steelers? That becomes not a good combination. But to your point, and I like the way you took this because we could segue a couple of ways. I think in terms of crumbs from the last one, when you talk about the last game, couple of nuggets that I wrote down from that game in terms of time of possession. The Steelers had the ball 37 minutes to their opponent's 23 minutes in the game. That's impressive. The Steelers almost had the ball an additional quarter in terms of time. The difference was about 14 minutes than the Bengals in the game. Another thing that jumped out to me, they only punted 4 times in the game, which is a season low. So they were, as Mike Tomlin talks about, the badonkadonk downs, the weighty downs, the fat ass downs. They were doing really well on the fat ass downs on 3rd down, converting theirs and not letting the Bengals convert theirs. Also, defensively, they only surrendered 10 first downs in the game. I mean, when you think of a team in 4 quarters only getting 10 first downs, that's incredible. And they got none of them rushing. Also, the Steelers outgained when we were talking about the yards, 2 times the yards essentially of the Bengals, 421 to 222. We haven't seen something like that. The combination of, from a yards perspective, from the Steeler offense and the defense combining on the same type of effort and really shutting a team down.
People were freaking out over the Steelers defense during that game too. That was the best part. It's like this is like 2 drives. That's all they have.
Yes.
You got a long way to go yet before I'm going to start freaking out about something called Jake Browning. Okay.
Yes, exactly.
He won't even play their next game against Pittsburgh. They'll bench him by then.
And I think the biggest crumb, while we're still talking about offense and we're talking about crumbs from the last one, is the whole Dionte Johnson thing that blew up. And you talked a lot about it on the past show. And I'm going to be honest, man, some of the times when I'm watching a game, I might be watching a player. I might not be watching the ball. I honestly didn't see it. I maybe it was the setting that I was in. I was watching it in a hotel lobby. No explanation there. And I didn't see it. with that being said, we were discussing this off wax, and you brought up a very good point because Mike Tomlin did not talk about it that much in his press conference yesterday. He basically said he'll let Dionte address it with the media and with his teammates, and you know that's how it'll be. But you brought up a great point that Mike Tomlin is probably playing three-dimensional Jedi mind trick stuff with Dionte by saying, look, man, I'm going to let fans and the media rip your ass to shreds for that dog shit effort you showed on that play without me doing it. And then I can bring you back into the fold as if I'm giving you a life preserver. Now,
Mm-hmm.
when I heard you say that, I said, damn, that's some devious three-dimensional Jedi mind trick shit type stuff that Tomlin is doing. If he's doing
It
that,
gets better too. I left off the second part of it. This is
give me
how I know that this is what he's doing.
Give me the second part.
Okay, Mike Tomlin is he is a master of controlling the message. I'm talking high level politician level message controller. He knows how to get people like me to write stuff that he wants me to write about. He is excellent at it. So one, you've got a complete dumpster fire in the Dionte Johnson situation. The optics of that are so bad. I don't know if we've seen anything like that with the Steelers. The comment that I made on social media after it happened, y'all can rip Antonio Brown as much as you want. You can complain about everything that he did. You can hate the guy, and I don't blame you. But Antonio Brown never did anything even remotely as bad as that. Every player that you have ever hated among the Steelers never did that on a play. That was a disgrace to a point where, honestly, if it were me, if I were Omar Khan, somebody needs to talk me into keeping him next year. I don't want that on my team. I know he's talented. This is a bad offense. Why are we keeping the quote unquote talented player who doesn't care, who's sulking after a play on our roster? Why would we do that? I ranted after the show, in our solo show, which you can go back and watch if you want. I don't know if I would recommend you doing that.
I would.
It was that bad that I took like 10 minutes screaming about it. Mike Tomlin's fully aware people like me are going to talk about it and have talked about it. So is there a purpose for him to throw gasoline on the fire? I don't think that there is. I think everybody has already weighed in. And for Tomlin, who knows he's going to be asked about it, who's going to have to be prepared to say something, for him to add to it only creates more distraction. The second part to this, point being, Tomlin is just going to play it straight down the middle. You guys take care of it. All right. I don't need to comment on this. He needs to handle himself better. Everyone else can have at him. The second part, the comment that he made, something to the effect, I'm paraphrasing, TJ Watt is the greatest defensive player in the world. He could have said that last week. He could have said that 3 weeks ago. He could have said it leading into the Browns game. He could have said it at whatever time. Why did he choose this press conference? Watt had a nice game, don't get me wrong, but anytime he could have said that. Why did he choose this game? To make sure that is what everybody after the press conference talked about and did not talk about Dionte Johnson at all. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. Now, coach, we're not letting Dionte off the hook here, okay? We're going to keep talking about Dionte because we've talked about TJ Watt being a great defensive player. Whether he's the greatest defensive player on earth or not, I think it's compelling for sure. I feel that you're saying that. I see why you're saying that. In all honesty, though, the only reason you said it is to get people to not talk about Dionte Johnson anymore. And I love it. It's brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. TJ Watt, great player. Dionte Johnson, bum. Okay? Bum. That label is not being shed. I don't want to hear from him anymore about fights with his teammates, which has happened multiple times now. Rumors about him swinging on his coaches at halftime and flat out giving up on a play because he's pouting that either they didn't challenge a bad call on the field, which it was, that should have been called a touchdown, or he's pissed that he didn't get the score that he never gets anyway. I understand the frustration, but Dionte, you should be used to not scoring by now. You never do. If your ass is on the field, play the game, okay? You're supposed to be out there making plays. You played well in this game. It pisses me off that you can't get out of your own way when it comes to this stuff. But I've had it. The anti-team stuff, you can't have it. Connor Hayward had to come from the opposite side of the line to go tackle the guy who recovered the fumble. And that ball landed 2 feet from Dionte Johnson, who didn't move.
Yeah,
I don't want a guy like that. I know he's good. I know he's talented. I've defended him for years, but he's an asshole. How much more of this can you take? He's not Antonio Brown. He's a good player. He's not that good. They could find somebody else to whine and complain about 4 or 5 targets a game who would at least dive on a fumble. That's all I'm saying. They can find somebody else at $25 million to do that.
Real quick before we transition to a quick talk about the OC candidates, your discussion about TJ Watt was perfect for Felicia's question. And Felicia asked, TJ has 2 games, I believe, left before he ends his 100 career games. I believe he can get 5 sacks on Murray and 4 on Mack the next week and get to 100 sacks. Yes or no? True or false? TJ get 9 sacks in 2 weeks. Hey, man, if anybody could do it, he can against these teams.
I'll say this. I will shout loudly and proudly who called that was going to happen if that happens. That would be absolutely remarkable. I don't know how many people have had a 2-game run like that in NFL history, but
Derek Thomas. I think Derek Thomas
had
a 1 game.
7 in a game. I don't think he
had a 1 game
the next week.
Yeah.
I think Watt certainly has the ability, and we saw last week what happens when you ignore Watt. One, I would say in fairness, the play on which Watt got the strip sack at the beginning, and I want to shout out to my boy Jim for pointing this out. An excellent observation by him. The Bengals had 2 players streaking down the field. If Watt doesn't get that sack, that's a touchdown. It's bad. A big defensive breakdown on that play. That shows how valuable Watt is. Watt has to make that play at that point because everyone else failed. It's a bad play. And on the second one, a complete and total offensive breakdown in that the fact that the Bengals didn't block him. 2 guys, neither one of them even bothered to chip Watt. It was obvious, a big miscommunication somewhere. But he makes them pay on a critical drive. The value that he has is through the roof. And sometimes it's a complete fluke, like the second sack. And sometimes it bails out the rest of the defense, like the first one. So Watt does many things. Watt is not purely a statistical value adder. He obviously is, but that's not the only element of his game. And I'm not prepared to get into who the defensive player of the year should be.
Yeah,
Watt will certainly garner a portion of that conversation, but there are like 4 of them this year that deserve it. 4 guys this year that could have won with their performance this year in many of the past several years. So it's a tough competition. Watt has his. I don't think that he needs to have 3 or 4 to really mark his territory. He is a first ballot, if not very close to first ballot Hall of Famer in my mind, and maybe one of the 2 or 3 best edge defenders the game has seen in his generation. Great player. He's always at that defensive player of the year level. And if point being, if he rattles off 9.5 sacks in the next 2 weeks, he's a legend above and beyond what we're even calling him.
Yeah.
And according to Mike Tomlin, the best defensive player in the world. Just don't talk about my wide receiver, please.
Absolutely. Before we jump into the game, real quick, because we're running a little short on time, we wanted to dip into the talk about the OC candidates. You listed some candidates here: Frank Reich, Deuce Staley, Faulkner, and Randall L. And those were an interesting set of names. Let me just briefly give you my thoughts real quick on those 4 names. Reich, no way. I just don't want a recently fired guy. I just think it doesn't look. It's It doesn't look right. The optics of it, I think, are bad, regardless of if he would be a great coordinator, and with his history of working with young quarterbacks, because he recently didn't get this young quarterback to play well. A lot of circumstances there. Deuce Staley, if I'm not mistaken, has never been an OC, right? Faulkner, I'll get back to Faulkner. Randall L has also never been an OC. The thing about those three candidates, all former Steelers, here's my thing in terms of the selection of the next candidate. If Kenny Pickett plays well, and I think we're predicting that he will play well because we both think that the Steelers are going to win possibly their next 4 games. To do that, he's going to have to play good football. With that being said, if they make a nice little run, win 4 or 5, 4 of the last 6, he plays well, why would you change from Faulkner?
I think
Why would
that's a
you
fair
change
question.
for,
I
why
would
would you change from a guy that is getting him to play well, and he has a play caller that he likes in Sullivan? Why would you change anything if he plays well throughout the rest of the season? So I would say what they do at the offensive coordinator position is solely based on his performance, Kenny Pickett being his in the last 5 or 6 games.
That's really the thing, and in a way, it depends where you want to turn with this. Do you want to give Faulkner the benefit of the doubt, even if the offense doesn't explode the way obviously you hope that it would, because he's the guy that's been on the job? No other candidate, unless you want to count Mike Sullivan, but that's probably not the way to look at it. No other candidate will have been in the fire already. Is it fair then to say, well, you obviously failed because you took over a dumpster fire and didn't turn it into the 84 49ers overnight? It's not all that fair. An outside candidate doesn't have right now what Eddie Faulkner has. I would say if I was lining them up, Faulkner would, where we sit today, Faulkner is probably going to be given a legitimate look as the team's offensive coordinator, not the interim offensive coordinator. That's a salary thing more than anything. They're just not paying him more right now. If he is satisfactory moving things ahead, I think he will get the job. Yes. Reich is worth mentioning simply because he's the kind of guy, from an outsider's perspective, this is the type of Steelers hire that you like. Frankly, it looks a lot like Munchak just on paper. He's been associated with championship level teams. He's been around great coaches. He has a track record of success, particularly with one key position, in Reich's case, a quarterback. He's made Nick Foles a Super Bowl MVP. That can't be an easy thing to do. To be with the dysfunctional Colts last year and get fired in the middle of the year, and to be with, I don't know what you'd call Carolina, but a complete dumpster fire there. Those are failures of him as a head coach, not as a coordinator, a play caller. It's worth pointing that out. Now, I have said from the beginning, give Eddie Faulkner the benefit of the doubt. He has to audition for this job more than any other candidate will. He is going to be held to more scrutiny than anybody else will. Give him that benefit of the doubt. We'll see how that goes. Deuce Staley has been a part of Ben Johnson, Dan Campbell, the offense that they put together with Detroit. Did excellent things last year. Obviously didn't work out so well in Carolina. I don't think that's a testament so much on his complete and total failure of anything. He will get an opportunity. Is he ready for that? Which is what I would have said. Antoine Randall L., the receivers coach in Detroit, done phenomenal things down there. Everything Ben Johnson has touched has been gold, and Ben Johnson is going to be a head coach next year. There's absolutely no doubt about that. Unfortunately, it might be the Patriots. We wouldn't want to see that, but Antoine Randall L. might come with him. I would imagine, though, if Pittsburgh had the opportunity, they'd love to discuss the job with their former player who's doing great things as a coach. You can see it in the organization, the structure that they have, what he's brought out of their receivers without using a dime of free agency money of significance or high draft picks. They've made dudes over there. Amon-Ra St. Brown is a damn good NFL receiver, and he's been with Randall L. the entire time. So I think a lot of them make very good cases, make very strong cases that are out there, but it's Faulkner's job to lose, in my opinion.
I agree with you. And to Double H's point, I did Halo drop into a landing zone, and I'm returning from the Middle East covert secretive mission that I cannot discuss on this
We
program.
announced that one. We said you were coming out of Pakistan. I made a Spies Like
Yes.
Us joke that nobody got.
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't
Yes.
have.
What is? Yeah. I was absolutely. Yeah. So of course, I can't get into those things. Um, uh, you know. But with that being said, as we get to the end of the show, let's just transition to our predictions. What's your prediction for this game, Neil?
For me, I like every advantage the Steelers have. I understand James Conner is there, but Mike Tomlin's going to point out James Conner for the nostalgic reason more than anything, not downplaying him as a player, but as Mike Tomlin himself would say, they play good players every week. Connor's kind of a jag. He's a good running back. They played a good running back last week, and he didn't do anything the entire game. I like the Steelers overall in this one, 27-13 Pittsburgh.
You know what? I like the Steelers in this game. Couple of things, couple of notes I wrote down from a defensive standpoint to watch. You got to watch the boot action stuff with Murray in the red zone. Famously, Minka Fitzpatrick, and the light is turned on for Minka Fitzpatrick and Montravius Adams in this game. It's the great tackle that Minka Fitzpatrick made against Kyler Murray in Arizona on a boot, where he caught him at the goal line, made a great tackle on him in open space and prevented him from scoring. So, red zone running with Murray, scored last week. Looks like he's running the ball well. I think you can't rush past Murray. Got to keep him in the pocket. And on the offensive side of football, I will say, dealing with five-man fronts. Tomlin made a big point about how dealing with five-man fronts on an offense is difficult because you can't get double teams. And I wanted you to speak on that real quick, Neil. What's the challenge, real quick, of dealing with the five-man front?
It's coordination, it's communication. It's when they bring that sixth that I think that you're going to run into more problems, but they fill gaps a little bit differently than perhaps you're used to. Duo stuff is kind of well, I don't want to say out of the realm of possibility, but you don't run duo against a five-man front. Outside zone can work for you. This isn't really an outside zone running team. Inside zone, you get a little tighter in your gap. A lot more discipline and a lot more communication is necessary.
And the other thing, of course, you touched on it, is the defense against James Conner. And Tomlin did talk about that in his press conference. I'm going to say that the Steelers hit that infamous, not dreaded, but mysterious, I should say, 30-point mark. I think the Steelers scored 30 points in this game, coupled with the help of some turnovers, and they beat Arizona 30-13, raising their record to 8-4. I like the Steelers in this matchup, but this also has the makings of trap game in bright neon for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So
Yeah,
I like.
nothing happens easy in Pittsburgh. So let's be honest. At the end of the day, a win is a win. The style points can get thrown out. I think the Steelers have a real favorable matchup against a pretty weak Cardinals team that's shown some things here and there. I don't have a whole lot of faith in Kyler Murray to be a four-quarter player. Still making mistakes, and they're really not very explosive. This is a team that was at the bottom of the barrel. New coaching staff coming in, first time coaching staff coming in. They have a long way to go, and winning a road game like this, I don't think is on their radar.
Hey, if Felicia said, Lance, you see 20 something for the Steelers, Lord, I'm looking for Boswell Golden Leg win. Come on, Lance, what are you smoking? 30 plus? I'm smoking on that la la la. Yes, I'm thinking 30 plus. I like the good vibes rolling. And with that, hope all of you out there had a great Thanksgiving. And I want to say big up to my little cousins, Jamal and Malik. Man, y'all got to root for better teams. Y'all got to root for better teams. One is a Bengals fan, or I should say Bungles fan, and one is a Vikings fan. Please root for better teams. I should have taught you both better. Those
It's your
teams are
failure, Lance.
Yes, it's my failure. Garbage and the Josh Dobbs experiment. That's a great band name. I think is over. But with that, we're going to conclude the program. And as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe. Go Steelers.